right. Okay. So, hello everyone, and welcome to Fableborne Roundtable. In this space, we will be discussing all things Web3 games. My name is Charla, Partnership and Collab Manager in Fableborne, and I'm so excited to be your host today. As always, in this roundtable, we will explore and discuss a specific topic featuring all the up and coming project in Web3 space. And, of course, they will be sharing all their insight and experiences on this specific topic. So today, our topic of discussion will be NFT utilities in Web3 games. We will explore various ways in which NFT utilities can be implemented in Web3 games, what benefit it offers to players and game developers, and as well as the challenges and opportunities that come with it. We have an awesome speaker with us today. I personally myself is a big fan of this project, and to be honest, a little starstruck myself. But we're so honored to have you guys here. So without further ado, let me introduce you guys to our speakers. We have Davey from the Beacon. Hey, Davey.
Hey, good to be here.
Yay. Tony from Shrapnel. Wait a minute. I think Tony was dropped. 1 second. Yeah, you should be here, Tony. Can you hear us? Can you speak? Yeah.
Hello, GM. Apologies. Twitter Spaces is bugging me hard.
No worries. Hello. And Andy from Stardust. Hi, Andy.
Hey there. How's it going?
Good. And of course, Milo from Fableborne. Hi, Milo.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
Yep. So let's just dive in. Hi, everyone. Can you guys introduce yourself and share a little bit about the games and or the projects that you guys are currently working on? Would like to start? Anyone?
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
I'm happy to kind of just dive right in. So hey guys, my name's Davey. I'm one of the co-founders of The Beacon. And The Beacon, what we are is a free-to-play action roguelite. And you can play it right now at thebeacon.gg. It's still actively in development, very much in the prototype phase. We're built on Arbitrum. And one of the cool things I'm really excited to build out coming up is essentially just a really core focus on multiplayer and adding multiplayer into our game loops. But yeah, it should be, in a nutshell, kind of just a pixel art dungeon crawler at the moment.
Love it. Thanks, Davey. Next, I guess.
I'll just jump in. Hi, everyone. My name's Milo. I'm a blockchain game designer at Fableborne. And to describe Fableborne in a nutshell, it's an action PvP base building game. So imagine Diablo meets Clash of Clans. And we've got this awesome opportunity of building it on the Web3. And that's essentially my job, to kind of adapt, create a strategy, think about NFTs and all of that stuff. So it's a pleasure to be here today and dive more into that subject and about how we approach Web3 at Fableborne.
Awesome. Thanks, Milo. Andy, you want to start? Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. How's it going, everyone? I'm Andy. Business development for indie games at Stardust. Web3 native background, kind of fell into doing BD, so this has been a fun last year and a half. So Stardust is a chain agnostic platform that allows for game developers to very easily provision custodial wallets in the backend for the users, as well as handle all the token minting and transferring and dynamic NFTs, all that fun stuff, all with kind of like a Web2 interface stack for game developers. And then for the end user, we focus on having like that frictionless user onboarding. So the authentication, you show up to a game, it's going to look and feel like any other Web2 game that currently exists, or I should just say any other game. And meanwhile, all the kind of crypto stuff is happening in the back end. The developer is in control of the UI, UX, and it's just going to be fun. And you just get to kind of like, take that elevated level of ownership. And that's all we really need to do at the moment. The rest of the stuff is being built, but we're kind of like the scaling solution for how to do things on chain. And, Davey, we're doing Arbitrum next. I know I was talking to Karel for like a long time, but, more to come on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. I guess last one, Tony.
Hey there, how's it going? Hi, my name is Tony. I look after Web3 marketing for Shrapnel. We are a AAA extraction shooter, fully moddable. We will be launching our first playable experience behind closed doors at GDC, and then we'll be on the floor at Consensus Playable, and we'll be launching on the Epic Game Store probably in Q3 or Q4 this year. So yeah, really exciting time for us right now. I'll pin our trailer up to the top here in a minute so you can see what the gameplay looks like. But we're having a lot of fun. We've got a lot of Web 2 veterans on the team, folks that have shipped stuff like Bioshock Infinite, CSGO, Halo. And so we're really focused on a high quality AAA experience that we're going to deliver. So excited to be chatting with you today. Excited to be chatting about how we're using NFTs to make our game even more exciting and fun.
Yep, absolutely. Me myself also very excited for that. You guys, what you guys going to announce or share in the coming weeks, months. So thank you for the intro, guys. Great to have you all here, and very excited for this space. So I guess we can just jump right in. We can start with our very first point of discussion, the basic and simple one. We hear a lot, that NFT utilities can improve gaming experience by providing players with let's say, sense of ownership, added value in game assets, all of that. But I'd love to hear all of your perspective in what ways exactly, like in, I guess, tangible, non-tangible ways. Can the NFT utilities in Web3 games actually improve the gaming experience for players? The floor is for you to grab. Like anyone can start here.
Yeah, this is pretty core to Shrapnel's ethos and what we're building. So I'll start off here. We one of the things we're really excited about beyond just the idea of ownership, right? Because that's kind of base table stakes at this point. Like the idea you own everything and can trade and sell it, and monetize on the blockchain. So all of that exists, right? All of the things in our game, the gear, the weapons, those are all NFTs that'll exist and have value. But beyond that, what I'm really excited about is, as someone who's been in game development for a long time, is the ability to impact like gameplay in a meaningful way that ties into the narrative. And so, like, what all that word salad means is, for example, if you're playing a game like Borderlands, or if you're playing, even like a Destiny, or these games that have a high level of multiplayer focus, and you're picking up weapons, you're generally picking up weapons or gear that is cool because some game designer decided it was going to be cool, and they gave it a fun name, and they made it look really neat, and they gave it a bunch of stats. Well, on the blockchain, you can make that experience, you can develop that lore alongside the customer, alongside the person playing the game, right? And so like the gun that someone owns can level up and grow with them based on their input, based on their gameplay, on their sweat equity. And I think, again, having been in the free-to-play world for a little bit, being able to express that sweat equity, not only in eventual financial value, but in tangible expression in the game, either visually, cosmetically, or what have you. So, like, for example, if you show up and win the season 1 championship, then we can make the gear that you have more meaningful as a function of that, and that then becomes a unique item that only you have. And I think that lets us tell different stories in really unique ways.
I would really agree with what Tony's saying. That's one of the parts of Web3 that excites me as well. You've got this historical data, everyone's verifying it. When I take an action that results in an on-chain transaction that is now recorded, and my achievements are recorded. The recording of achievements and accomplishments is a really nice part of what Web3 allows us to do. It's not like it wasn't impossible before, but now it's on the blockchain, and it's decentralized, and it is it's very real. This is also where SPTs become like really cool and useful. Obviously, they're not there for trading, but they make a great user profile where I can say, okay, well, these are the kind of in-game actions that I have done throughout my history playing, for example, Fableborne or Shrapnel or whatever. And I feel like the industry is finding lots and lots of nice new use cases for the blockchain, and how we can apply these to games is really exciting. For me, it's really about taking the different kind of technological developments and seeing how we can apply them to things that people already know and love in games. I look at DAOs and I instantly see an opportunity for in-game guilds to be able to manage shared treasuries, kind of vote on which tournaments they want to participate in, what they want to do with their shared funds, etc. And Web3 really enables us to do this in an automated way. So we, as developers, don't need to be hand-holding, making everything go through our servers. When we're maintaining the server, everything goes down. No, none of that. It's all in the player's hands. And that's something that really excites me as well about the Web3. So I would say always really thinking about how we improving our users' kind of experience of how we want them to experience our game world. That's how I'm seeing the utilities really enhancing the game experience. But it's not just a one kind of like you own your game items. That's no longer enough. That's kind of the base expectation. But being a bit more clever about how we can make everyone's life easier. How can we, for example, speed up prize distribution in our esports? That's something that we're looking at a lot as well with our Pixion League, where we aim to evangelize what we call lunchtime esports. We want to make esports really, really accessible. People who don't have extreme amounts of time to become an esports player, or they've just got 20 minutes taking their lunch break, hence the name lunchtime esports. We want to make sure they can get involved in esports, they can compete, and they can get rewarded, and essentially onboard them into a more kind of esports-esque experience, for lack of a better word. And the blockchain really helps us do this because we can just instantly hand out their rewards. We can create these automated situations where, even allow users to create their own user-generated tournaments, join, pool their own funds together, and have a kind of winner-takes-all situation, or top three, and then the others lose on their entry fees. So this power is something that we can now hand out thanks to the blockchain.
Yeah, I love where your head's at, Milo. Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, like blockchain is really just a coordination tool for kind of just coordinating kind of a bunch of people who like may not know or trust each other. And so, I mean, like I think that's super cool, kind of like how you guys are thinking about like the whole DAOs and certain sort of I guess like directions yeah, I guess like directions that you guys can go with that. At least from our side, how we're thinking about things is kind of really on the UGC and user acquisition side. And so UGC, user generated content, like our team has a pretty storied background, essentially kind of building mods for essentially MMOs back in the day. The big one was Tibia. And so like we're pretty well versed in the modding scene, and from like a game developer's perspective, traditionally you have these sort of maybe like you'll release some sort of like modding toolkits, etc. But there's really not a great way for the game developers themselves to be able to kind of like monetize in some of these sort of like user generated kind of content, these like user generated mods. And I think like what blockchain at least like really kind of helps in this case is that it allows it allows essentially kind of just the sharing of economic interest between both the the game itself as well as say like the modders. To give an example, something that's like I think we're super excited about is kind of the prospect of maybe like, hey, like we want to create some sort of like modding toolkit. Maybe you'll need to have some sort of like NFT or using some sort of on-chain I guess like token, etc. And then based off of that, you, the mod creator, can essentially kind of create your own in-game world, utilize a lot of like the core game asset, the core game kind of IPs, and when they can kind of tap into this sort of like marketplace for trading, maybe like items for their mods, and you're able to kind of like utilize blockchain to kind of get this sort of like cross pollination and kind of sharing of certain, say, like royalties or whatever between all like the stakeholders here. So that's something that I think hasn't quite kind of like happened just yet. We see it right now in some of those sandbox like games, like the Sandbox. But I think like the maturity of this sort of concept, I think still has some way to go, and we're super excited to kind of like see that grow.
Yeah, and to wrap that up, you guys covered pretty much everything. I was really excited that you brought up UGC. UGC is extremely exciting in this space. But I guess as far as what kind of utilities that enhance the gaming experience, I think a lot of that is still TBD, to be honest. We're still very, very early in this. Like, this is all a derivative. It's going to all be a derivative of gameplay at the end of the day. And for any one game, like, you have to have that core UX that players want to come back to, and any value or any all these assets will be just a derivative of how much fun is the game, more or less, right? And so when you think about it in that way, then you add in the macroeconomics of people getting fundraising. We might be 10 years out because people got fundraising. These games are being built now, and then give another year or two before that Gen 1 is done, and then we have you need multiple generations essentially in a wide breadth of games. And then what are you doing with these tokens? Why do they need to be tokenized? Like, these things all are going to come, the cool aspects all come a lot later when you can really feel the network effects of the utility of these blockchain aspects or blockchain tokens in the first place. So it's a lot of kind of like theory at the moment. I'm really excited for the future, and just it's always good to take a breath and recognize how early we are, because we're still like racing to get these Gen 1 fun games out there. And all of this is a derivative of derivative, like 5 years out plus before we really feel that utility of bringing the token to a proof of ownership to another game, doing crazy swaps inside of the game, all through Uniswap or whatever you want to do. All that stuff's very exciting, but I think we're going to feel a massive network effect in the future on what this will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Great insight. I agree with that. Like, the space is so early. There's so much we can achieve in coming year, even like month, week. The space moving so fast. So would you guys say that like having a valuable NFT utilities is one of the most important thing to motivate players to spend more time and resources, in a Web3 games that we're building now?
I think it's one piece to it, but kind of what Andy said. You really need just really good core game loops to be there in the first place. I mean, like CS:GO and stuff like that. People like the items. There's activity on the marketplaces. And it was able to drive more engagement for the game, but that was only after there was already like a large audience and a large enough amount of players. And I think I think we're just still really early here, and there's needs to be a lot more focus, for example, on just kind of like building out like just really good game loops. But with regards to like NFTs and just utilities, I think there's kind of like two axes to kind of like think about this. There's obviously one, just the I guess the tangible kind of like benefits, say like, hey, this NFT will get you access to this. It will give you XYZ. It'll give you kind of make you eligible for some sort of airdrop, some stuff like that. But I think like we should also be prudent to kind of like think about, for example, just like the emotional utilities offered by NFTs as well. So like if we think about just Supreme, the brand, like Supreme has like a branded brick that they were selling, and like if you own that, like what's the real utility of it other than just being like a luxury good, something to essentially get you into like the sort of Supreme kind of I guess like membership club in a colloquial sense. And so like I think there's something there where it's like a lot of NFTs, at least from our experience, we've experimented with just having pure raw utility NFTs, where everything could be an NFT, and then thinking of it also as potentially just as like luxury goods. And I think like especially the product market fit right now for NFTs has kind of really more gravitated or kind of like fit better into NFTs being some sort of luxury good, some sort of like more or less low scarcity item, something that's people who hold it can kind of like feel a sense of belonging, feel a sense of kind of membership into some sort of circle. And I think like that sort of stuff, that sort of like emotional utility, I think is like super prudent to kind of incorporate and build on, essentially to kind of just like help as another lever to drive engagement within the game.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to utilities, how can we use them to incentivize people to spend more time and resources in our games? Instantly, what springs to my mind is the dynamic aspect, the upgradable aspect of NFTs. giving a user an NFT with a starting set of utilities, and also the promise of increasing the yield of those utilities, increasing the scope of those utilities in exchange for time spent in game, perhaps soft currency spent in game, a bit of grinding and all of that. For me, that's a clear way of essentially saying, here's a starting NFT, you put your time, your engagement into it. Perhaps do you also share the game to other people? Do you bring more people on board? Are you an opinion leader? Are you sharing this project across different platforms? Do you have a big guild? Whatever we want, really. But we're saying that you can earn more utilities through other ways than just pure hard cash. And I think that's important because what we want to develop is our game world, is our community, is the love for the virtual world that we are creating. We're putting lots of lore, lots of hard work into the art, lots of hard work into the mechanics. And ultimately, we want people to see this as a valuable space to spend their time. So the ability that dynamic NFTs give to us to reward people who already own an NFT, to increase its value, to increase its yield, simply by completing XYZ, I think is kind of the go-to ways to get people to spend more time and resources. This may be expressed in many different mechanics. On one end, you've got just an upgradable sword. You put in some gold, some resource stones, and you craft it up, and now we update this transaction on the blockchain, and you've got more yield from whatever minting fees that are shared amongst all players. Or it could also take the shape of something like a battle pass, where we're giving you an NFT and we're saying you put more time into this and you'll get more reward. So lots of different applications, but I do see game devs going to start to get more creative with how we can incentivize people to spend their time and effort in game.
Yeah, just echoing that, Milo, I think the concept of like active issuance in tokenomics, for example, that's something that we focused on pretty heavily. I think that's going to be more and more the norm, where, to your point, we're going to find different ways that people can contribute to these ecosystems, whether it's, I think someone was talking about UGC earlier, whether it's creating a new map that a bunch of people play, and you reward both the players of that map who curate it to other players and also the creators of the map. I think those are going to be interesting ways that we help people discover new content within the games and reward people for helping other folks discover that content and host that content. So I think it's going to permeate like both inside and outside the game, right? And I don't think that there's any reason why, months, years from now, we couldn't be finding ways to reward content creators like streamers and YouTube creators for their contributions to the games that we're creating and the universes that we're creating.
In that sense, are you kind of thinking it more along the lines of just kind of, I guess, a tool to help better distribute rewards?
Not just rewards, but content, right? So like, if someone wants to spend, X amount of hours creating the Shrapnel equivalent of Red versus Blue, I don't know if you remember that Halo series on YouTube.
Yeah, I remember that.
Then we won't. Yeah, I mean, that was like an iconic thing, right? That drove a lot of eyeballs for Halo. And those guys got invited to E3 and they got a lot of soft benefits, but they weren't ever really directly tied to that revenue stream or that business. And we want to fix that, right? Like if we have a group of people that are creating content like that for us, we want to reward them heavily with, our token or access to the people at our studio and ways to make them both financially and from a content perspective more exciting.
And what's so cool about the organization of this idea of like UGC is that it can be modular, where you have now a game mode with, the game mode's built by XYZ wallet address. The map itself is built by XYZ wallet address. The skins used in this game mode are built by XYZ wallet address. And that all gets packaged together into one game mode with all the credits being done, the proof of ownership of and authorship all being modularly composed together into one kind of game mode token. And you could even get to the point where the rails are set up for royalties to be automatically distributed to, a pool of UGC content creators for a given game, and broken out by who, which maps and assets were touched on the most. So it's a very, very cool future with the UGC stuff, the synergy there with like
And Andy, on that note, just to double click on that, like that's actually what, and I'm a caveman. Like our economics guy hates it when I talk about this, but it's in our white paper. That's the way our land works. Like we sold a bunch of quote unquote land NFTs, and they actually serve as the quote unquote servers, if you will. And so the owners of the land are the people that will actually curate the content to Shrapnel players, right? And we own a bunch of land, so we'll curate the content that we think is good, based on what the robots tell us. But like you, Andy, could own a plot of land, and we will emit our token to you based on the utility that land brings to the ecosystem. How often it's played, how much money is spent on it, how many kills, or whatever we think is important, right? We'll identify the high value actions. And then you, as the owner of that land, can then take that emission and press some buttons on the back end and emit further downstream to the people who are creating the bridges within the map, or the guns, or the enemies, or the AI, or whatever, right? Like you become effectively, like, I don't know if you ever played like Game Dev Story, but like the overlord of the map experience on your land.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Got it. Yeah, like exciting stuff, right? Like I think we all can see how much the space has grown in the past year itself. There are a lot of great games being developed, also new utilities being integrated. And actually, as someone who's being part of the team who built the game and the infrastructure itself, I'm sure all of you guys have your own, favorite or preferences when it comes to utility user case, right? So if you could pick, let's say, two NFT utilities example, what would they be and why are they so important? Anyone?
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in here a little bit, and like I think part of why it's a little bit difficult to kind of like give this answer per se is just kind of part of it is depends on whose perspective you're looking at.
Yeah.
I think a large part, especially just given the stage of the game that we're at right now, like I think the developer side of things has been immensely kind of powerful, kind of tapping into this sort of NFT, the Web3 ecosystem. So far, I guess, in the case of the Beacon that we did, we've essentially really tried to use NFTs as a way to kind of grow and build like a sense of community. And, via that, we've been utilizing it as a way to, giving out like rewards or whatever to essentially people who are able to kind of like help evangelize for us. And I think part of this is just like the benefit of building in Web3, why we kind of picked this space in the first place. It really just kind of like flips the entire kind of like publishing narrative for games on its head, and really just makes, say, self-publishing a lot more viable of an option for game developers. And along the way, we're able to kind of help give out these sort of NFTs, bring in, build up community around our game, around this ecosystem, as well as just really incorporating them in from like the very earliest points of game development. And we unlike a lot of, say, traditional game development where you maybe like you have like a Kickstarter and then you go dark for like a couple of years, in our sense we continuously run live operations even at this stage, even though we're still very much in the prototype phase. And so like even every single week we'll have like new content that we essentially make accessible to our holders, all that stuff. But I think in terms of like the core game loops within our game, given that we are like a free-to-play game, the way that we kind of think about NFTs and the value that they give to their holders is that only people, for example, with NFTs can beget NFTs within the game. And so say if you don't hold an NFT, you just won't be able to kind of be able to win NFTs throughout the course of the gameplay. And so that's some way that we're able to kind of like make that sort of delineation and just give additional kind of like value back to kind of our core members.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's all about building under the spotlight, right? Like you can't just put out a product and then go MIA for even a couple months. People are start having doubt itself, right? So absolutely resonate with that. Yeah. Anyone else?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna get real. Oh, my bad, Milo. You go.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead. We started at the same time. Okay, I'll go. So some utilities. Which two would I pick? So it's hard to pick two. I think there's just going to be so many more that are going to appear. I mean, for now, I really like, from a gameplay perspective, just this history of where an item has been, who it's gone through. I think we're going to look back in a couple of years and look back on some of the early examples of NFTs that have existed, and we're going to really look at them with nostalgia. And I can imagine that, you know, these will be like the Mona Lisas of the new digital age. But the fact that we've got this clear history verified and no doubt about it, that's a pretty cool aspect. I really like just kind of well, I think it's useful to have this factory element where, you know, you've got an NFT, and if you go through XYZ, you know, you level it up, you invest some time, effort, maybe some utility token into it, you get to duplicate it essentially, and you become like the issuance controller of this item. I think that's kind of interesting because now we're really decentralizing this item truly, instead of always just business to customer selling new NFTs to customers. We're essentially giving the rights of creating new items to the people who either were there early or bought a certain type of item or earned a certain type of item. And I will always say this, you know, bought or earned. For us, it's really about accessibility, and the time that you put in is worth just as much as the money that you pay. So when we do kind of approach NFTs, if you've read our light paper, you'll see that we really had a focus on accessibility, making sure that there is a lot of supply there to give generous rewards in game for our players, and that our plan is really to keep this going for a long time, with self-sustainability as a focus, rather than essentially grabbing cash upfront, because we're looking for, you know, long-term viability and onboarding a lot of people and kind of aiming for large volumes of transactions. I've already said two, but I could keep on rambling, but I will stop rambling for now, even though there's lots of other cool things that excite me about utilities and what we can do with them. Tony, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I agree with all of the customer-facing utilities that you all have brought up. Ownership, the ability to extract value from sweat equity. I think like that's all super exciting, and a lot of the stuff we're focused on. I think a not often talked about utility for NFTs is more at the industry level or in aggregate. And what I mean by that is, at least in games and in Web 2, it's very hard to extract user level data from a broad set of games, right? Publishers have access to that view sometimes because they manage many IPs, and that can be very powerful. You know, I've worked at EA where it was really interesting to be able to look across the FIFA and the Madden and the Battlefield user base and draw insights. Same thing, I worked at Amazon for a long time, and it was really interesting to be able to draw insights from the things that those different customers are purchasing. With the blockchain, a lot of that walled garden mentality is gone with regards to data, and we'll be able to look at how people were flowing in and out of games by virtue of how NFTs were flowing in and out of their wallet for years to come. And so we'll really be able to understand and drill down into what games and what features are exciting for players, right? Like imagine if you could go back and drill down into how the user base for League of Legends changed when they introduced the loot box system as a function of ways to get skins in that game instead of just a straight spend dollars to get them, right? Like that would be such an interesting case study for everyone to be able to dig into. Then that'll exist. That is a utility for the industry that'll be created as a function of us making games on a blockchain, which I think is incredibly interesting.
Just wanted to kind of piggyback off that a little bit. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff, for example, you know, the metrics and all that stuff, we track them at an individual level, like inside the game. And so it seems like, you know, with the whole blockchain movement here is that, you know, there's a bit of a unspoken social contract where, you know, in return for us putting, say, you know, you as a player in exchange for your, you know, greater spend and greater engagement within my game, I'll put, you know, your achievements and stuff like that, you know, in the public sphere, where, you know, potentially, especially from like a user acquisition perspective from other third parties, you know, you can potentially derive additional utilities apart from just say like my game. So kind of almost like whale hunting, but like from other games or like other games players. So I mean, like it's an interesting kind of phenomenon, especially kind of just that like socially unnegotiated sort of contract, if you will.
Well, I mean, we're being pretty explicit about it with some of our partners because, like, you know, we're real good friends with like the Illuvians of the world, for example, and we acknowledge that, like, we just know this because everyone at Shrapnel's worked in video games forever, that players don't play one game throughout the course of 365 days a year. Players rarely play one game exclusively. They might play 2 or 3, and generally the 2 or 3 games that the mass of core game players are cycling through are some sort of shooter, maybe multiple shooters, some sort of sports game, and sometimes some sort of like adventure or MMO RPG style thing, right? And so we acknowledge that that's going to happen. We want that to happen, and we actually want to find ways to encourage the players of our game to go and check out stuff from people that we're partnered with as the place that they go when they want to do something that is not an extraction shooter. And that's one of the things that we, as a studio, really love about Web3, is there's an openness to that.
Yeah, awesome. And did you have anything to add to this discussion, or?
I love going last because I get to look like a genius every time by just I agree with all the people up here. You know, it's a really big wrinkly brain moves here. But I guess the one thing I'll throw into the mix that I think it's kind of like a non-answer, but just because it's something that I've been talking about recently, I think it's interesting. Something that a lot of the Web3 games that we're talking about that are up here and that we're talking about are all very much focused on like a user experience and having it be a fun game first and foremost, right? Kind of moving away from the Axie kind of flow, and the one it's kind of like a utility for the developer almost. That's very cool. Is that you get to actually have that provide for many users if the game is fun and frictionless. That where were you moment for learning what crypto is, and that can be done inside of your IP. So like if you learned like what the, I don't know, internet was, or making that light bulb connection. And for a lot of people, that's like, RuneScape or Neopets, like, kind of like the lesson underneath the execution and just getting to feel that. It's a very powerful moment that you can capture at scale. And crypto is so powerful that you can actually kind of really take that and run with it in a lot of different directions. So just having a beautiful UX while having NFTs in your game, especially if they're not, first and foremost, or you have to have XYZ to be able to do anything in the game or whatever it is, you can kind of be that gatekeeper in a good way and really kind of bring them in and teach them in positive ways what crypto is. That's just a very fun concept. I think that a lot of people are not quite what's what I'm looking for, underestimating, because games is just they're so scalable and you can have so many users showing up and sharing experience together. So yeah, there's an example.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great insight. We have a lot of inspiration that we can take only from this discussion. Actually, I have my little notes here. This roundtable hall is set up. We're actually doing research for Fableborne. But yeah, that's a joke. And on that note, we all know here that designing an NFT utilities that players actually cares about is not easy, right? Like it's like inventing a new thing with no playbook as much as references before. But my question would be, what are some challenges that you guys have encountered or see in implementing the NFT utilities in the Web3 games that we're building here, and how did you overcome them, or at least planning to overcome them?
Sure, I will jump in first this time because I realized that I don't jump in first often. So boom, here we go. So I'd say one of the things that the blockchain would risk doing for our users is just breaking up a smooth UX. I think this is what we think about quite often, is how do we provide a seamless experience to people? We don't want them to, have a requirement of a lot of prior knowledge about Web3 to be able to interact with our game meaningfully or get the full experience. And B, we don't want them to be interrupted constantly by transaction confirmation screens or gas costs, etc. So there are lots of different solutions to interfacing with this. I think perhaps one of the bigger solutions is the smooth onboarding of people. How do we explain to them, this is an NFT, like there's a line of code that makes this uniquely yours, and there's a whole system of validators who's saying that it's yours and why is this important? But I think through small steps, and through interfacing with something as as understandable as a video game, we can create that understanding step by step. Then it comes to the transaction confirmations, etc. We can, as a developer, offset those costs and bear those costs, and just kind of like supply the cash for those costs through different means, such as marketplace fees or royalties, etc. So essentially, if you're in game and you're going to go into a dungeon and you're going to earn a sword, you're just going to pick it off the ground. Maybe that is a blockchain transaction saying, okay, you now own the sword, but instead of paying the gas for that, developer pays the gas for that. And maybe when you're trading it on the marketplace, we're actually taking a little bit more to offset that price. So that's kind of conceptual, but in theory, that's kind of a way to go around breaking up the experience. And I'm just going to leave it at that for now. I might speak later on the same subject, but I'll let other people go.
Well, yeah, so, kind of another way to say what you're saying, Milo, which I totally agree with, is that generally speaking, I don't think that every single little tiny thing in a game needs to be tokenized. There's increased literal cost to use the blockchain, and there has to be a reason justified for why an item has become a blockchain token. Because every time that item gets touched, it's going to cost more than, exponentially more than it would ever cost on a database, which is what we're all used to. So totally agree with that. I mean, and then for fun, I'm just going to keep pulling that thread. That's why it's kind of almost laughable to me, the idea of like the holy grail of Web3 gaming is that MMORPG where every single asset is a blockchain token. And we might get there, but there's so many reasons why that may never happen, including kind of just opening up your game loop to 24/7 markets in every single aspect of the game is a fun idea. But then as far as the actual user, right, they don't want to pay for gas. Going back to what you were saying, they don't want to pay for gas, which is kind of what the Stardust project is built around, where the user doesn't have to know that they even have a blockchain token happening in their inventory. And it's all kind of obfuscated away. I think that the number one challenge that we're going to see with implementing NFTs is going to be the custodial wallets and the actual user onboarding to get into the game and doing things on chain. So, that's, again, obviously very much relevant talking about Stardust here, but just in general, you're not going to be able to have 500 million players in the next 2 years, or 5 years or whatever, where every single person's writing down a set of private keys, especially if it's, they don't want to have the same wallet for every single thing in their lives. Now we've got multiple sets of private keys. It's just not going to happen. So it's most likely that you'll have a kind of a home-based couple of wallets, and then you'll have, custodial wallets basically being generated for you through centralized services like a Stardust, or at each app layer where they will, generate and provision that for you so you can have a frictionless onboarding experience, because user are going to become the name of the game very quickly here, as it is already in gaming. So I'm sure we'll the cost to acquire a user where they have to write down private keys is exceptional. So I think that would probably be the biggest hurdle I'm seeing at the moment.
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of jump in here. So, I mean, I think you guys kind of hit the nail on the head there with regards to just the user experience. I'd like to kind of just take this from a different angle, especially just from the game design side of things. And I think, Andy, you touched on this a bit. One of the things that we're very conscientious of is essentially just the over-financialization of kind of like game assets, right? Like at the end of the day, a successful game is one where it's like people will kind of just come to your game and actually just play it. There are plenty of games out there where there are no financial, like economic incentives at all, and people still kind of play. And I think like, especially when you kind of tie in essentially dollar value to kind of all these sort of like in-game assets, it sometimes like actually causes players to optimize the fun out of like a game itself. People are kind of constantly thinking, hey, like this item that I have, is it going to like go down in price? Is it going to go up in price? And you kind of stop thinking about it in terms of the the game itself, and kind of more just about like being like a financial speculator. And like I think this is one of those things where it's a difficult piece to solve. And I think like no game has really kind of solved it as of yet. And I think like there's a couple of, I think, really clever ways to kind of get around this. One is just illiquidity kind of is your friend. Kind of contrary to the current whole Blur, Marketplace, Meta. I think there's a world where you specifically try to maybe like keep things fairly illiquid, such that, for example, the dollar value of whatever you've spent or whatever you own in game isn't kind of always like top of mind, and you're able to kind of like just immerse yourself back into like the actual game loops itself. Other ways is to actually just do some sort of, say, like a set, like almost like a ceiling, like a price ceiling. People talk about setting like royalty or like price floors for NFTs, and I think like on the contrary, we should probably for certain classes of in-game assets probably try to set some sort of effective ceiling such that it removes a lot of like the speculation out of the actual like item. Whatever you buy in, it's probably not going to like go over whatever the ceiling is, unless you want to do like some sort of like over the counter or like some sort of secondary markets beyond that. And in terms of just the pure utility, you can still just use your item as like any other item. So I mean, these are two, I think, like kind of big pieces that like we just I think as an industry, I would definitely love to just see more adoption and more kind of creativity in kind of how we kind of like manage this. There's no one size fit all for NFTs or like in-game assets, and especially with something as complex as like game economies, it's certainly kind of valuable for us to at least like set up certain different mechanisms such that we preserve the fun of the gameplay and preserve kind of like the immersion that people come to the game for.
Yeah, thanks, Davey, for the insight.
I really agree with that. Actually, on the point of managing speculation within the game, it can actually be pretty destructive towards the game economy as a whole. Or if you imagine just like a base item shooting up like 100 times in value, just stopping new users from onboarding and having the core experience, that's something that game devs probably want to avoid at all costs. Yes, of course, there's the headlines of, wow, this game made 100x floor price, but if it destroys the rest of the game, that's not really worth doing. I think we've seen in a lot of early projects that Ponzi schemes might be very impressive at the start, but won't last very long. So I think, yes, managing speculation, ceilings, floors, being clever about how we, as game devs, set up systems that not only will, provide this reduced volatility, but how we can scale it as well. How can we make sure that, someone with $10 million isn't going to be able to destroy that system by buying this and buying that and pooling together resources, whatever guild DAOs, whatever they want to break those ceilings and floors. I think that's a more technical challenge that people really need to get their minds on. But it's definitely on the radar, and I think scalability as well. What kind of an issuance, what kind of a control of the liquidity is going to work. We just haven't seen games, Web3 games, for so long that we can look at a project and say, yeah, that's a clear success. But definitely things to keep our mind on as devs.
I'd actually like to just jump in with another point here, just about the challenges of NFT. Just because I haven't really seen this talked about at all. It's really just on the distribution side. For example, regional pricing is something that every major kind of like globalized game will undertake. World of Warcraft, I don't know if you guys remember, subscription model, for example, in North America, Latin America, the subscription prices are cheaper. But you go to China or Russia, it was free to play. So I think like there's certain stuff, especially if we're thinking about like NFTs and them offering utilities, we are pretty much setting like one price or like one sort of value globally for these sort of like game items oftentimes. And I think like that's something that's really challenging and kind of just like isn't really well aligned with commonly acknowledged like game distribution methodologies, where you try to set regional prices to make them acceptable for the local audiences. And so like for example, let's say the utility from an NFT maybe is to like it gives you I'll just say like for example like $100 worth of I don't know like skins for this season. That's probably not going to be worth the same, or I don't know, like it may or may not be, but like for someone say from like East Asia, where the barrier to I guess like the entry price is the exact same as someone from North America. I think you can see it as a way where maybe this is not necessarily the most, I guess, nuanced or like the most proper kind of tool for these sort of kind of game assets, where you don't have any flexibility as like a developer to be able to kind of like set these sort of regional prices. So I mean, this is a challenge that just there isn't a solution at all at the moment, and I think like for the most part, nobody's really at that stage yet to be thinking about distribution to kind of like have really encountered this problem just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Davey, for the insight. On that note, actually, speaking about speculation, distribution, floor price, a little bit of a sensitive question, but also important. How we as a game developer integrate NFT into our business model as a gaming company, to create sustainable revenue stream, but also in the same time incentivize player engagement in the most fair way possible. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, so from our perspective at Shrapnel, we are basing our, as I stated earlier, our curation system for how people discover new content and maps in our NFT system. So people have already purchased a bunch of our land NFTs, and we'll have some more sales of them as we march forward towards launch. And so what we're doing is the holders of those NFTs, the holders of that land, will receive our token emission relative to the amount of content that is utilized on their land. So if someone goes out and recruits the best map maker and best artist to make skins or enemies, or an awesome AI person to make the modes that they build really cool, and everyone plays those, they will get more Shrap that they can then distribute to the creators of that content that lives on their NFT or on their land. That's one example of how we're integrating NFTs into our game and our ecosystem. And then beyond that, again, kind of like the table stakes, like guns and gear and stuff that you win in the game, many of those will be NFTs that you can trade on a marketplace.
I'll kind of jump in just a little bit, with regards to how we see like Web3 and like NFTs fit into just the overall like business model for the game. I mean, like I touched on this earlier, just that Web3, like I think the biggest revolution in Web3 is really about kind of flipping the game publishing industry and just essentially returning a lot of, say, economic interest back to game developers that used to be held by game publishers. And so I think like the way that we see games get developed and go to market is going to be just really, really different, especially along the Web3 route that really couldn't have been done in the past. And kind of what I mean by that is, being able to kind of create and build a community just from the get-go. Oftentimes using NFT as some sort of I guess like proof of membership, if you will. Essentially being able to like run I guess like pushing out kind of game prototypes really early on, and just doing really intensive live operations throughout pretty much the entire development cycle. But kind of if you think about it in this way, it solves the funding problem for games in the sense that you're able to kind of like crowdfund in a sense, perhaps like more successfully than you've ever done before. You're able to utilize your community for all sorts of stuff, such as marketing and kind of getting the word out, as well as all sorts of like other stuff that traditional publishers might kind of take on. You can kind of I guess now pawn that off, if I guess that's not the right word, but essentially kind of like give that out to your community to help with. And ultimately, I think like we're probably, I guess like I'm really excited to see like how this really changes the indie game industry, given that these are some of the ones like that have just traditionally faced like the hardest time kind of getting their games built and going to market. And I think like really exciting how kind of just the entire model of Web3, NFTs, royalties, all that stuff really supports the creation of just more indie games, hopefully than ever before.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Dave and Tony been saying. I'd say for me, really, it's a transfer of like power now. In free-to-play gaming, our objective is, extract value from the players. You get to play the game for free, but at key points, we're going to monetize you. We're going to push you to make a purchase. And what you get out of it is, well, you get the experience, which is nice, but you don't get something tangible that will live on beyond our servers, let's say. But our new model could be, for example, to make you essentially a reseller of this content, and we're essentially just supplying the experience, and you guys are trading it between each other, and we take a little fee. That's different now because instead of just spending $10 on a fire sword that just goes into nothing, that fire sword I can now sell on to somebody else, maybe for $8, but that's still like $8 conversely to the zero value that I was getting out of a free-to-play game monetarily. But that's just the kind of mathematical, economical point of view of it. There's also lots of stuff that the blockchain enables, and I think really just discovering new ways is going to be very interesting. I'd say right now we're really at the front line of discovering these new monetization models. Just a quick one this time.
Yeah, I'll hop in here and put a bow on. I'm gonna have to hop here at the top of the hour. I guess going back to what Davey said, it's a very cool idea, and kind of combining what you guys have been saying, where you are giving someone, the end user, a much more durable asset. And I was talking to someone yesterday about this, and they said this to me, which resonated, which is a lot of these whales, especially, but just in general, view kind of participation in your ecosystem less as a purchase and more as an investment. Not necessarily to go 10x, but that value, if they believe in it enough to make the purchase, they feel like they're going to be sticking around for a while. And then, to what Davey was saying, you can actually leverage that and kind of manage your community in a way where those people are now, they're bought in, and they're going to go and work on your behalf. They're going to go and not to build up a pyramid scheme, but to they want to see the community grow, and not necessarily for financial reasons. But they are bought in. So it's also kind of a point in time thing. Like personally, I lean towards a little bit more on it's just going to be a regular, 90% just going to be regular Web2 kind of gaming philosophies and growth and things like that. And this we'll feel the network effects years and years from now. But it is a current thing right now where you can have these people kind of get bought in and really churn a lot of good content and things out for your IP and your team. Kind of enlarging your team that way.
Yeah, totally. I guess to simplify, or the bottom line is the ownership is the technology, and the business model is how we distribute it, right? Like the distribution itself is the business model, and I guess it's depend on each project and how we actually designing that. So that's a great insight, guys. Thank you so much. We're almost running out of time. Actually, we're already running out of time. Before we wrap up on this space, just want to have really quick chance to everyone here who's listening who want to ask question directly to our speakers. Feel free to request as a speaker, and we'll give you the access to speak. If anyone, I didn't see anyone's requesting here. So if not, then that's all the time we have for today. So thank you for our guests that coming to the space today from Shrapnel to Beacon, Stardust. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us and sharing your insight on this topic. So if you guys here enjoy this episode, enjoy this space, be sure to follow us. Follow also Stardust. Check out Shrapnel, the Beacon, and I'm sure actually everyone here already did. And most importantly, join our community in Discord, and we'll make sure you'll be the first one to know when is the next roundtable is happening. So we'll keep you posted. Thank you so much, everyone here. Thanks, Milo. Thanks, Davey, Tony,
Thanks
everyone.
for having us.
Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Nice
Have a
meeting you
nice
guys.
one.